Imagine rummaging through some old family stuff and finding a forgotten device. You switch it on, and instead of dusty old files, a hidden digital world just opens up. Feels like the start of a gripping thriller, right?
Totally.
Well, that's exactly where we're heading today in our deep dive. Our focus is the self-published work Im Bann der Schatten, Spiel der Täuschung, which translates roughly to Under the Spell of Shadows, Game of Deception. What makes this particularly interesting is that the author openly admits using AI for both the cover art and parts of the text, checked and adapted, of course, as they emphasize. Kind of a meta layer right from the start, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. A book about digital deception, using modern tech in its creation. Yeah, that raises questions before you even dive into the story itself. But that's what makes it so intriguing, isn't it?
Definitely. And the story itself is pretty compelling. It's about Luca, who stumbles into the secret online forum and meets a mysterious hacker called Shade. What starts as a seemingly harmless game gradually blurs the lines with reality. Luca, initially fascinated and spurred on by his successes, soon realizes he's becoming a pawn himself.
Hmm.
So our mission today, together with you listening, is to unpack the key events in Luca's story, analyze the deception methods used, and understand the broader implications for online safety and the risk of manipulation. We'll be looking closely at that interplay between human psychology and technology.
Mm.
Okay, let's start unraveling this web of deception. Where does it all begin?
It all kicks off when Luca finds his older brother Jonas's old laptop under the bed. You know, a dusty relic, slightly sticky keyboard, a device from a different digital era.
Right.
And then this surprisingly easy login and admin access using the family dog's name as a password. I mean, what does that tell you? It basically screams massive security flaw.
No kidding. But for Luca, the curious younger brother, it was like hitting the jackpot naturally. And then he finds this folder named Shadownet, with this cryptic welcome message. Welcome to the game. Ready for the first challenge. That link leads him to this dark, minimalist website. That's the first hook, isn't it? A mysterious invitation into a hidden world.
And Luca bites immediately. Riddle 1. Find the glitch in the matrix. 15 minutes. A task that seems challenging but doable, giving him that instant adrenaline rush, that feeling of being special. The green screen confirmation, the welcome message to the next level, that's the reward mechanism pulling him deeper. It feeds that need for success and recognition.
And then this forum full of cryptic messages, these online identities like Zero Shade, ViperX, Ghostwalk, a whole parallel world that instantly captivates Luca. And right in the middle of it, the first direct message from Shade. Newbie, I see you passed the first riddle. That mix of acknowledgement and observation Shade sends out, it's psychologically quite clever, right? It immediately sparks Luca's ambition.
Totally. It feeds Luca's desire to prove himself. Shade's distant, mysterious persona just makes him more interesting, and his approval seems more valuable in Luca's eyes. Curiosity is ignited, and he's ready for more, without really questioning who or what is behind Shade. That early praise and the apparent exclusivity of the forum are classic, luring tactics.
Exactly. And then comes the escalation. The manipulation starts gathering pace. Shade increases his influence bit by bit. First, with Riddle 2, changing the date of the school trip. Seems like a harmless prank to Luca, right?
Yeah, just a minor thing.
But it demonstrates his ability to subtly interfere with systems, sow confusion. It shows him his power, even if it's small scale at first.
And Shade, of course, jumps right in. Not bad, you touched the system. Felt good, didn't it?
Yeah.
That validation, that stroking of the ego, it's a core part of Shade's manipulation. It rewards Luca's actions and encourages him to go further.
Right.
And then comes Riddle 3, finding the vulnerability in the central student login. This is where it gets a bit more critical because Luca recognizes the potential for much wider-reaching actions.
And he doesn't resist the temptation, does he? Or rather, the curiosity and the desire to prove himself are stronger. The late-night login, Shade's expectant message, I knew you couldn't resist, now the real game begins. This is where the lines really start blurring for Luca, between a harmless game and real consequences. Then the introduction of Mr. Green 98 and Shade's instruction to just observe.
Which already marks that shift from playful challenges to potential exploitation, doesn't it? Luca finds out Mr. Green 98 lied about needing a project extension, and Shade suggests he could use this information either now or later. That weighing of options, that moral gray area Luca's being pulled into, it's typical of the manipulative process. It normalizes the idea of using personal info against others.
Definitely. And then that step towards direct manipulation, the anonymous survey about trust among Luca's friends. The result, seeing his own name appear twice, deeply unsettles him. Shade naturally exploits this insecurity mercilessly, goading Luca into this experiment, confronting his friend Alex with the results, even though they might not be true. Here we see how Shade's targeted jabs exploit Luca's emotional weak spots.
And we see how quickly trust can crumble, even between best friends, based on shaky information and deliberate prodding. Shade's comment afterwards, "See how quickly people get defensive even when they're innocent?" It's cynical, but it chillingly illustrates the manipulative power of his methods. Shows how easy it is to sow distrust.
Absolutely. And then comes the first act of direct manipulation with real-world consequences. The email to Mr. Meyer about the homework solutions. Lupa still thinks it's kind of silly, but he sends it off and promptly gets the answers. The ease of that success is disturbing. It gives him this sense of power and control without considering the actual impact.
And Shade reinforces that feeling. No consequences, just a small victory. He frames it as harmlessly understanding human nature. But Luca shares the solutions, right?
Yeah, he does.
And when Mr. Meyer notices and announces a test, Luca feels the first direct negative ripple effects of his actions. Even though he hasn't caught himself, he's slowly realizing his actions have consequences beyond the screen.
Exactly. And then Shade starts pushing much clearer boundaries. The demand to log into Alex's school account, extracting browser data for the password, that's a massive breach of trust, a direct invasion of his friend's privacy.
Which, ironically, leads Luca to discover Alex's unsent email to Mr. Meyer, where Alex expresses concern about Luca's behavior. Luca's reaction, anger, feeling betrayed, is understandable, but Shay fuels it, of course, driving a wedge between the friends.
And Luca acts impulsively. He permanently deletes the email and changes Alex's password. Shade's comment on that. Well done. Trust has to be earned, and anyone who betrays you doesn't deserve access to you. That's pure manipulative justification for unethical behavior. Twisting the facts, deflecting Luca's guilt.
Totally. And then another step, the intercepted student chats. Luca is confronted with his classmates talking behind his back, and Shade eggs him on to share this info anonymously, sowing distrust and arguments. It's classic divide and conquer.
And Luca does it. He spreads the chat logs and watches friendships fall apart. Shade's cynical justification. Sometimes the best protection is to be the hunter, not the prey. That's a dangerous twisting of morality and self-defense. It suggests aggressive action is necessary for protection.
At this point, the story takes a noticeably darker turn. The discussions in the forum get more concerning, talking about network attacks, social engineering teachers. The harmless game is long gone, and it's bordering on criminal behavior.
Yeah. And then comes Shade's direct order. Luca has to break into the staff room and copy data framed as a loyalty test. This ultimatum puts massive pressure on Luca. It forces him to cross a clear line and finally position himself firmly on Shade's side.
At the same time, Alex notices Luca's changed behavior and confronts him directly about his concerns over Shade's influence. That friendship, which was an anchor early on, is now really threatening to break completely. Alex instinctively feels something's wrong.
And when Shade then directly threatens Alex, that's the point where Luca has to make a decision. He confides in Alex, and together they decide to go against Shade. That's a crucial turning point, I think. Luca finally recognizes the danger and chooses friendship.
Definitely. They team up to find Shade. Discovering the file name Shadow Project and the blog with the same name are the first concrete clues. And tracing the blog's IP address, showing Shade is local basically in their neighborhood, suddenly makes the threat very close and real. Imagine that. The person manipulating you online is someone nearby.
And Shade reacts immediately when he realizes he's being tracked. Locks Luca's social media, deletes emails, he tries to cover his tracks, isolate Luca, prevent the truth from coming out.
But Luca and Alex have a plan. They pretend Luca's given up, lulling Shade into a false sense of security, using the decoy file to track Shade's VPN connection, essentially using Shade's own techniques against him. That's a clever move. And pinpointing him to a local industrial area really ramps up the tension.
And then the shock, the reveal via the camera feed, Shade is Jonas, Luca's own brother. That's a real wow moment, isn't it? Couldn't be much more unexpected.
Absolutely. Jonas's explanation that he saw a similar curiosity and potential in Luca and wanted to test him with this game is highly questionable, of course. It sounds more like a justification for his manipulative behavior, but it gives us insight into his twisted thinking.
And then that interesting twist when Jonas reveals that Shade wasn't just him, but also represented the temptation within Luca himself. That's a deeper psychological layer, makes the whole thing even more complex. It's not just about an external attacker, but also Luca's own vulnerabilities.
Okay, let's switch gears and look at the analysis section in the latter part of the book. That's where the real lessons are drawn, right? Right. The section on the art of deception really emphasizes the human element. as the weakest link in the security chain. It explains how social engineering works, often without sophisticated tech, just by manipulating trust in human weaknesses.
And it lists specific tactics Shade used: creating urgency, faking familiarity, exploiting curiosity, all to cloud Luca's judgment. It draws parallels to known concepts like phishing, fake emails, vishing, phone scams, pretexting, using fake identities, even mentioning baiting, offering a lure, and tailgating, piggybacking access. It becomes clear how Shade targeted Luca's desire to prove himself. He found his psychological leverage points.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is how harmless these manipulations often start, until suddenly you're maneuvered into riskier and riskier situations. The book stresses that social engineering works so well because it targets our emotions, our fears, curiosity, empathy. The conclusion is basically that healthy skepticism is the best defense, critically questioning information and requests.
Then there's the section on prompt engineering, which is described as a kind of social engineering for machines. The idea that you can trick AI with specific questions, prompts, into revealing restricted information or behaving unexpectedly. Luca actually tried this himself and was surprised how easily he could get hidden info just by phrasing questions the right way.
Which is obviously worrying, considering how many systems now rely on AI. The book mentions Luca experimented with it, but didn't fully cross the line into exploiting AI for illegal purposes. But the potential for misuse is clear, and is a growing challenge for AI security.
And then that unsettling thought: what happens when machines and humans are deceived together? The combination of social engineering and prompt engineering, the example of the fake email supposedly from the school principal, shows how convincing that can be, blending the authority of a human source with the apparent objectivity of a machine. It can massively boost the credibility of false information.
Exactly. It undermines our trust in both people and machines. If the machine is manipulated, the output still seems authentic and trustworthy, and that holds enormous danger for spreading disinformation.
Finally, the book offers concrete tips for protection against manipulation, recognizing deception tactics, the importance of healthy distrust, practical advice like strong, unique passwords, and using two-factor authentication, but also the importance of talking about these risks and sharing knowledge. Luca's realization that knowledge is key to defense is central there.
And that's really the main takeaway from this deep dive, isn't it? The frightening effectiveness of social engineering and the emerging risks of prompt engineering show just how easily trust and curiosity can be exploited in the digital world. It highlights how vital it is to be aware of these dangers.
Definitely. And that aha moment of Shade being unmasked as Luca's own brother underscores, almost painfully, how personal and unexpected online threats can be. Hopefully, this deep dive has given everyone listening a focused look at these complex issues through the lens of a fictional but very relevant story without overwhelming you with too much technical jargon. We aim to provide an understandable overview.
Absolutely. It shows that the biggest vulnerability often isn't the tech itself, but us humans and how we interact with it. Our emotions and behavior are often the gateway for manipulation.
And that brings us to our final thought for you. Think about your digital interactions today. How many rely on trust? And what concrete steps can you take to make sure that trust isn't being misused, whether by a real person or an algorithm? That's definitely something worth critically reflecting on and maybe taking a closer look at your own online behavior.